Hello, beautiful people. It's Lulu. Welcome to the Lulu Essie podcast, where we do things differently. There is no editing here, and I mean no editing, and no polish. These are real, raw, honest conversations that give you practical tools to transform your life from the inside out. I want to ask you, have you ever woken up feeling with that tight feeling in your chest, that constant buzz of anxiety that won't let up? That feeling of low-key butterflies in your stomach that seems to be there more often than you'd like. Yes, that feeling. The one we try to ignore, to push away, or tell ourselves, I'll deal with that later. Before we dive deeper, I want to be clear about something really important. Today we're talking about the kind of anxiety that shows up in our daily lives. You know, the anxiety that comes with money worries, relationship uncertainty, work changes, health concerns, and that general kind of unease about the future. I'm not addressing anxiety that stems from trauma or deeper psychological conditions. That requires and deserves professional support. But if you're dealing with that everyday anxiety that seems to be part of modern life, that does sometimes feel like it's going to take over, if that's you, then this conversation is for you. And today we're going to get real about anxiety, and I'm going to share some tools that have helped me navigate my own journey, including something that happened just this past week. Here's what I know. So many of us are carrying this weight of daily anxiety and uncertainty right now. And we're often carrying it alone. We're telling ourselves we should be handling it better, managing it better. Or my least favorite, just saying, staying positive. But that's not how we do things here. No, we are going to get real about what's actually happening in our minds and in our bodies when anxiety shows up. We're going to open up our mental fitness toolkit and explore some practical, doable ways to find moments of calm, even when everything feels shaky, wobbly, out of alignment, and just not right. And I want you to know something right from the start. This is not going to be one of those just meditate and your problems will disappear conversations. And to be clear, meditation is incredibly helpful. It's powerful and effective. But that is not what we're discussing here. This is going to be honest, it's going to be real, and most importantly, it's going to be useful. Right here, right now, in your actual life. But before we dive into the tools and practices, I want to share something with you. I want to share something that's happening for me right now. You know how I talk about being gloriously messy and real with you? Well, here's some real talk. I've been experiencing some uncertainty at work lately. Nothing dramatic, but enough to create that familiar buzz of anxiety. Changes are happening, and change always brings uncertainty, and uncertainty brings its best friend along, anxiety. So anxiety is a feeling a powerful one, but a feeling nonetheless. I keep reminding myself, sometimes several times a day, that feelings are not facts. I heard this a few years ago and it stayed with me. Many psychologists speak about this, and Susan David is probably the one who speaks about this most. The point here is that I have the facts and I have the story I create, the feelings I create about those facts. And it's important to know the difference, because the story is where the anxiety is born in most cases. Not all cases, but most. And here's what I've noticed when I catch myself caught in anxiety. It's usually because I've taken a fact like things are changing at work, and I've created this whole elaborate story around it. You know what I mean. That late night mental movie where we play out every possible scenario, usually picking the absolute worst case scenario to focus on. I'm sure you can relate to this. Can you? Maybe you've experienced something similar, where you take a situation and before you know it, your mind has created this whole story around it. And it's usually our interpretation of the facts, our what if about the facts. It's not actually the facts themselves. Let me give you a real example of what I mean. The other day, I was in a meeting and my manager mentioned some upcoming changes to our team. Some changes to the team structure. That's the fact. Simple, right? But within minutes, actually seconds, if I'm being honest, my mind was already writing this whole dramatic movie. And to say it was extra would be an understatement. What if these changes mean I'm not valued? What if I don't fit into the new structure? And that is code for, what if I lose my job? What if this impacts all the projects I care about? And before I knew it, I was feeling that familiar tightness in my chest. My throat felt dry. I felt the butterflies flapping their wings like crazy in my stomach. Yes, that buzzing anxiety, that energy we talked about earlier, had gripped me with force. But here's where it gets interesting. When I actually paused, and it takes discipline to pause, because we are so used to jumping on the roller coaster and letting it take over without even pausing for a moment. But I'm using these tools daily. So when I paused and wrote down the facts versus my story, the facts versus my feelings about the facts, it looked completely different. The fact was simply team structure is changing. That's it. Everything else, that was all my interpretation, my story. And guess what? Most of my anxiety wasn't coming from the fact. It was coming from all those what ifs I added to it. So this is where I want to share something really practical with you, something you can use right now, today, whenever you feel that anxiety spiral starting. I call it fact versus feeling. It's a tool, and it's become one of my most reliable ways to find calm when everything starts to feel off. When I start feeling myself beginning to spin. And here is an important tip. Do not wait until the spiral has gripped hold. Be mindful and try your best to do this when you feel that spiral starting, because it's much easier to get a handle on it at the beginning. It's scary, I know, but don't wait. Do this the moment you get that first sign of anxiety, the moment you get the first sign of that spiral. Okay, so here's how it works. And I'd love you to try this with me right now, if you're in a space where you can. All you need is the Notes app on your phone or a piece of paper, whatever works for you. First, you're going to draw a line down the middle of your page, or if you're using your phone, just use 2 separate notes. On one side, write facts, and on the other, feelings. Because remember, our feelings are real and valid, but they're not always telling us the full story, especially when anxiety is running the show. Now, think about something that's causing you anxiety right now. It could be big, could be small, doesn't matter. Don't judge it. Take whatever situation is creating that uncomfortable buzz we talked about and write down the facts on the one side of the page and the feelings on the other. And notice how different the 2 sides look. And while my work example shows you how you can use this tool for daily anxiety, I'll share something more personal that shows how it works in more intense moments. And I'll break it down for you. I'm going to share something very personal with you that happened just this past week, because it's a perfect example of how to use these tools to help us navigate those intense but natural moments of anxiety that life throws at us. So here goes. I discovered a lump in my breast. And let me tell you, as someone whose mom had breast cancer and a mastectomy, my mind immediately went in to overdrive. Here's how I used the facts versus feelings tool in real time. On the facts side, here's what I actually knew. I found a lump. I needed a diagnostic mammogram because of the dense breast tissue from last year's screening. Lumps can be either benign or malignant. That's it. Those were the only facts I had at that moment. But on the feeling side, that list was long and heavy. My fear was intense. My mind immediately sped off into, if my mom had it, I must have it too. I started spiraling into, how will I cope? I haven't even fully recovered from my foot surgery. The anxiety was creating this whole future scenario that wasn't based on any facts I actually had. But I had lots of so-called justification for my anxiety based on my family history and my past mammograms. And this is where the tool became so crucial, because in moments of real fear, in moments where anxiety feels completely justified, that's when we need to be able to separate facts from feelings the most. And the point here is not to dismiss our feelings. They are real. They are valid. But the point is to help us stay grounded in what we actually know versus what our minds are creating. Remember, feelings are not facts. And I'll be really honest with you. I did not do the facts versus feelings exercise perfectly in any way. And we've established here on this podcast that we embrace imperfect action. I had to use this tool several times because the anxiety kept gripping me. It was messy and I was emotional. And that's okay. I was not aiming for anything other than not spiraling out of control. And I want to take you into the room with me because this is where another simple but powerful tool came into play. I had finished with the mammogram, which many of you will know is painful and awkward, and there's absolutely nothing pleasant about the process. I then went to have an ultrasound. I was lying on my side and the technician was waving her wand-like thing over my breast. I closed my eyes and I felt tears rolling down my cheeks. And as they did, I took hold of myself and I just focused my entire everything on my breath. I literally just zoomed in and became laser focused on the breath coming in and leaving my body. That's it. It was the most loving thing and the most helpful thing I could do at that moment. And it allowed me to stay connected to myself, to stay present and not get even more tangled up in the story. This story could have swallowed me whole. It nearly did. Then the technician announced, "Okay, Miss Essie, I found the lump. Please wait outside while I show these images to the radiologist." I could feel myself wanting to freak out. And I just stayed focused on my breath as I sat in the waiting room, gown open to the front. Again, I poured my whole self into my breath, in and out, simple, slow. After a few minutes, I heard what sounded like the voice of an angel, and she said, "You're all good to go. It's okay." You know, I share this very personal example because it shows how these tools work in real, intense moments. But here's what I want you to know. Anxiety shows up in so many different ways in our daily lives. Maybe it's about work, relationships, money. Money feels like a big thing for many people right now. Maybe it shows up as a health scare or just general uncertainty about what's happening in the world right now. No matter what triggers your anxiety, whether it seems big or small, we don't judge here. These tools can help. The facts versus feelings exercise, combined with simply connecting to your breath, they work together to create this anchor. They create this thread that keeps you connected to yourself. It's a way of staying present when everything feels overwhelming. Too much, too complicated, too difficult. And I'll be very clear about something. This is not about pushing your feelings away or pretending they don't exist. Like I said, your feelings are real. they're valid, and they deserve to be acknowledged. Fear or anxiety can be an emotionally healthy response at times. But what we are doing here is learning how to hold both, to honor our feelings while staying grounded in the facts. Because when we can do that, when we can separate what we know from what we're feeling, it gives us this tiny bit of space, this little moment of clarity that can make all the difference. Right, now it's your turn. Think about something in your life right now that's creating anxiety. Maybe it's a situation at work, a difficult conversation you need to have, a decision you're struggling with, or just that background hum of uncertainty we talked about earlier. The facts of the situation that you're thinking about, just the plain, undecorated facts, are probably much simpler than the story your anxiety is telling you about it. And you know what's fascinating about all of this? Scientists and researchers have been studying what actually happens in our brains when we're caught in anxiety versus when we use tools like the ones we've talked about. And while I am very clearly not a neuroscientist, I am deeply curious about how our minds work. And what they've discovered really helps explain why separating facts from feelings is so powerful. And here's what the scientists and the researchers have found. When we're anxious, a part of our brain called the amygdala, think of it as your brain's alarm system, goes into overdrive. It's like having a super sensitive smoke detector that goes off not just for an actual fire, but for someone making toast 2 blocks away. And when this happens, it actually makes it harder for us to access that part of our brain that helps us think clearly and rationally. But here's the really interesting part. When we do something like our facts versus feelings exercise, or when we consciously connect with our breath, we're actually helping our brain shift gears. We're giving that alarm system a chance to settle down. Just settle down. Chill a bit. And this allows us to get in touch with our more rational thinking again. Dr. Dan Siegel, he's an amazing neuropsychiatrist who studies how our brains process emotions. He calls it name it to tame it. Basically, when we can name and separate our feelings from the facts, we start to regulate our nervous system. It's like turning down the sensitivity on that overactive smoke alarm system. When we understand this, that our brain is actually doing exactly what it's designed to do, it's trying to protect us, it helps us be a bit gentler with ourselves. We are not broken when we feel anxious. Our brain isn't malfunctioning. It's just being a bit too protective, like an over-eager security guard. This is why tools like facts versus feelings and connecting to our breath aren't about fixing something that's wrong or something that's broken. They're about working with our brain rather than against it. Facts versus feelings gives us mental clarity, while connecting to our breath is physically grounding. This isn't just pop psychology. It's grounded in decades of neuroscience research. Can you notice how this resonates with your own life? Tools like these can help us work with our biology, not against it. I want to come back to you now. Remember that situation I asked you to think of earlier? That situation that's creating anxiety for you in your life right now? Well, let's use what we've learned. Your brain isn't broken. It's just being super protective right now. It's trying to keep you safe. And that's okay. Take a moment right now, if you can, to separate the facts from your feelings about the situation. What are the actual undecorated facts? And then notice all those what-if thoughts, those stories your mind is creating. They are valid feelings, but they're not facts. And if you feel yourself getting overwhelmed as you do this, remember, you can always come back to your breath. It's simple. In fact, it is so simple, we often overlook it. Our breath is always there, and it's one of the most powerful tools we have for turning down that sensitivity, for staying connected to ourselves, and for staying present. And when we do that, we are really in a place to support ourselves. Let's reflect for a moment on our time together today. We've explored how anxiety shows up in our bodies, in our minds. We've uncovered practical tools like facts versus feelings and staying connected to our breath. And we've looked at the science behind why these approaches work. And you know what? You don't need to remember all of this perfectly. Just take what resonates with you right now. And it's important to remember, this isn't about eliminating anxiety completely. That's not the point here. It's about having tools that help you stay grounded when things feel off, when you feel out of alignment and just simply not good. Whether it's a health scare like the one I shared with you, or work uncertainty, a relationship issue, or any of life's challenges, you have these tools now. They're simple, they're doable with minimal time, and they're always available. And most importantly, they work. And here's what I want you to remember. These tools are like muscles. The more you use them, the stronger they become. Start small. Be patient with yourself. Be kind to yourself. It starts on the inside. And remember, our friend Grace is always there when it feels like it's all too much. And beautiful people, please remember that these tools are for navigating daily life's uncertainties. If you find your anxiety is becoming overwhelming or persistently, consistently interfering with your daily life, please reach out to a mental health professional. There is support available, and asking for help is brave and it's an act of self-love. So, if you've loved this conversation, do me a favor, please. Take 2 seconds right now to rate this podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen. It helps this show reach more beautiful souls who need these tools, and it helps me immensely. And share this with someone you know who struggles with anxiety. Your share right now might be exactly what that person needs today. And next week, we're diving into something that one of our listeners shared with me, and I want to thank him so much for doing so. What he shared with me hit me right in the heart because I know it's one of the biggest things we all struggle with. We're going to talk about consistency, or more specifically, why it feels so damn hard to stay consistent. You know that feeling? You've tried so many times to build a new habit, an eating habit, a gym habit, start a new routine, make a change, and it just doesn't stick. And then that voice pipes up. Why even bother trying again? Well, we're going to explore this together. We're going to look at why consistency feels so challenging and why your past attempts might have fallen short. And most importantly, how to approach consistency in a way that actually works. Because there is a different way to think about this, and I can't wait to share it with you. And as we close, as always, what comes from the heart reaches the heart. And today, this comes straight from my heart to yours with an extra dose of grace and an extra dose of understanding for whatever you might be going through right now.